Hi everyone, good afternoon.
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Eyal and I'm the CEO of a startup company based in Tel Aviv, Israel, and we're very proud to be partnering with ICMA to work on how to leverage AI to help decision making in local government. Just a little bit about us before we get started. I'm proud to say today we work with 40 different cities in 4 countries, representing over 10 million people, including the cities of San Antonio here in Texas, Tel Aviv back home in Israel, and many, many others. But what I really want to talk to you about today is city management. One of the reasons we were proud and really lucky to partner with ICMA is that managing a city is one of the biggest challenges that you can imagine. Can anybody take a guess what is the annual budget for the city of Austin? I'll give you just a quick hint. Local government, not you, Mark. Local governments, which is not a well-known fact, are in charge of so many different services that we rely on in our day-to-day. They're in charge of our transportation, our infrastructure, public safety, education, cultural activities, afternoon programs for kids. All of those things are the direct responsibility of our local government in many, many cases, and they can really impact our quality of life as residents. To do that, they actually spend massive amount of taxpayer dollars. So again, let's make this interactive. What is the annual budget for 2018-2019 for the city of Austin, Texas? Without Googling it, who can take a guess?
4 billion.
4.1 billion, very good, sir. Are you from the city of Austin? $4.1 billion were spent by the city of Austin in 2018-2019 to provide these services. And the amazing thing is that while they're doing all this and really working hard day and night to provide us with these services, it's really hard for them to know, are they doing a good job? Because what makes a government do a good job? What is the metric for success when we think about an organization like local government? That metric is something a little bit more elusive than revenue, like the public sector. It's something you might call resident satisfaction, or basically how happy people are with the services they're getting from their local government and from life in their community. But today, measuring that is, let's say, somewhat problematic. The tools that we have on hand to measure resident satisfaction, community satisfaction, haven't changed much in the last 20, 30 years. One of the most commonly used tools till this day is town hall meetings. Has anybody ever been to a town hall meeting here? Wow, that's a very good ratio. I guess we're biased in a government session. But even in this room, less than half the people raised their hands. And these are the tools that local governments today have to know how happy people are. Tools like these, tools like phone surveys, tools like mail surveys, a lot of tools that are non-real time, very limited in the scope of people that they engage, and are very limited in the level of different services and projects that they can survey. What we've been looking at for the last 2 years is there a way to get that metric of satisfaction, of happiness, on a much wider scale, in real time, and across all the different issues that local government is responsible for. And to do that effectively, we need to start thinking what data is already out there. When we start looking at that, one of the first sources that jump to mind is social media. Who here has an active social media account? Much higher than the number of people that go to town halls, right? Every minute, just on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, 1.3 million new posts are created. Abbas created like 7 new posts while we were sitting here. He's the social media manager for ICMA. In the US, 51% of Facebook users log in multiple times a day to that platform. This is a wealth of data that can provide us with a unique peek into the collective mindsets of our communities, of our societies. But that's only one source of information where people are already sharing their opinions, their views, the things that they care about. 311 is another great source. Has anybody ever reported an incident to 311? Even less than town halls? That's really sad. Call 311, people. 311, emails that the city's getting, visits to the city's website. There's so many digital activity we're doing that can show what are the things that we care about more, what are the things we care about less, and what is our level of satisfaction from different services. And that's exactly what we do at Zencity. We take all of that information, and using AI that we developed, we turn that into actionable insights for local government leaders. We take Facebook posts, we take 311 reports, we take emails that the city is getting, and for each one, using our algorithms, we turn that from unstructured data into a quantifiable score, into a sentiment score. So is this a positive or a negative piece of feedback? Into a topic score. What is this about? Is this about waste management? Is this about public safety? Is this about the event that the city held last night? And then we aggregate all that and share it back with leaders in local government to help make decisions on a daily basis. And I want to give just a couple of stories on how our customers have already leveraged this technology over the last 18 months. So one of the first use cases that's really interesting is performance management, or basically seeing a cause and effect relationship between things that are happening in the city, policies that the city is rolling out, and the actual feedback or sentiment that people have towards those policies. Has anybody ever seen something like this? Here in Austin, maybe one or two across the street. So e-scooters are invading the United States. I don't know if you're aware of that, but we see a view of that because we're working with about 30 cities here, and all of them are dealing with some way or another with e-scooters. And some of them have a really hardline policy. We're not going to let them be in our city no matter what. Some of them have no policy at all, just come in, do whatever you want. And a lot of the cities are struggling in that tension. Should we be harsh with these companies? Should we be lenient? And one thing that's really interesting is to test what the public actually wants with this service. And one of the cities we're working with, the town of Cary, North Carolina, actually did this with our software. They looked at what were people saying about e-scooters, what are the things they were worried about, and what are the things they were happy with, and then they tried a policy for a few weeks. And as they rolled out that policy, they could see the change in sentiment around the topic of e-scooters, and then take that change to City Council to make better policy decisions based on this. And just as a quick hint, while there were some complaints about sidewalks being blocked and that impacted policy, most of the response was utterly positive, and that's why the policy in that town is more lenient around e-scooters. Another example is around sidewalks. Whoever is walking on a sidewalk? Thank you. So in one of the cities we're working with in Israel, they had a budget of about $6 million to renovate sidewalks, basically replace cracked pavement. Before they started executing on that $6 million of our tax money, they looked at what people were actually talking about when it comes to sidewalk maintenance. And to their surprise, not a single mention talked about cracked pavement. All of the discussion happening on the sources we track were about sidewalks being blocked, like in these lampposts that you see here. People can't get through because of infrastructure built into the road, because of trash bins blocking the way, cars parked on the road. And incredibly, based on data, they could get City Council to shift that budget from cracked pavement, which didn't really make an impact on the quality of life of people, into a problem that people actually cared about, that actually impacted their day-to-day. And they ended up investing that money in burying infrastructure underground, in building trash bin storages to stop them from rolling out to the streets, and in doubling parking inspectors in prone areas. And believe it or not, doubling parking inspectors increased positive sentiment across the city because this was a real problem that people were dealing with. So this was a great example of how they could see what are the things that people really care about. Another great use case that we see is long-term planning. So how can we use data that's aggregated over time to really make more informed decisions before we do something? And today the way cities do it is by town hall meetings, for example, or by surveys. And with our platform, we can look in data that's aggregated over time and have massive amounts of information to base our planning on. One of the cities we're working with, a city of about 60,000 people, had a budget cycle coming up, and the Parks Department said, we want to look at what are the main things we should be investing in. And based on over 100,000 different comments, 100,000 in the city of 60,000, that were aggregated over 8 months, they could see 3 very interesting things. A, the topic of parks was one of the leading topics being discussed across the city. B, 40% of all the discussion about parks were about this specific park that was very, very neglected and not well kept. And 50% of the discussion was about live music events that they're doing at parks and positive feedback around that. So based on that information, they came to City Council and said, we need more money to renovate that park, to do more live music events, because people really like them, and this is the data that supports that decision. And incredibly enough, they got a 50% increase to their parks budget in that city, and then following that decision, they could track positive sentiment and see that their decision was actually impactful to a lot of people across the state. And one last use case that I want to mention is what we call proactive management or proactive governance. And we got a really, really sad, really horrible example to this just a few weeks ago with the city of Aurora in Illinois. I don't know if you've had a chance to hear, but there was an active shooter event there in Aurora just a few weeks ago. And one of the most immediate needs that the police department in that city had was to know what information they can share and not share about the police officers that were injured in that event. There was a lot of pressure on the chief of police in Aurora to share that information, and she wanted to make sure that she doesn't hurt the privacy of the police officers that were on the field. So she wanted to give a formal statement about injuries, but not say anything that wasn't already public or already well known. And using the data that was aggregated on our platform in real time, sent to her only on the topic of public safety, only on the topic of the shooting, she could see exactly what the public already knew and relay just that information and keep privacy of everything else and not share that with the public. So just to wrap things up, if we want to be more inclusive in the civic engagement that we're doing, we have to start to think in a new way, start to think beyond surveys, beyond town hall meetings that are, no matter what we do, are biased to a very small amount of people that actually have the time, energy, and awareness to participate in those events. And if we want to be able to do that, we need to start thinking about how to meet people where they are, which in our case, and in 2019, it's in many cases digital platforms. That means the right platforms, the right language, and have something that's very easy to use. So thank you very much. This is our great team, 50% women, almost everyone from local government or from data science background, and I'd love to be in touch. Thank you very much.